Welcome everyone to this week's episode of In the Know with Kat Bobino. Today my extra special guest is coming all the way from San Francisco. This is Lexi B and she works as a program manager at Air BNB. Welcome to the show, Lexi.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. I know you couldn't come into the studio, which is fine because you're so busy at work. So why don't you tell our audience what you do for Airbnb?
Yeah, so I currently do a lot of program and project management at Airbnb, working in the finance, compliance, and legal realms. So that is a long term for basically just saying that I lead projects in finance, compliance, and legal. A lot of these projects are internal tools, making sure we can be more automated. And then some of them also are really big things like our discrimination task force and a lot of humanitarian work, which I'm very proud of and very blessed to be part of that. So yeah.
Okay, so we all know Airbnb as somewhere you can stay that's usually cheaper than a hotel and you actually get the amenities of being at home or in an apartment. But you said something that I didn't even know about, which is the humanitarian work and the diversity work. So, what are you guys doing at Airbnb?
So Airbnb's mission is for everyone to belong anywhere. And so we do take that very, very seriously. So starting from, making sure that we have diversity at our company, making sure we have diverse hosts all around the world, making sure we're having conversations of what diversity looks like and, the effects of discrimination on groups of people and how we can affect change in that. I think that when I joined Airbnb last March, that was the biggest thing that I was most impacted by, was working with a group of people who really want to have those hard conversations and say, how can we actually change the world? How can we talk about how can we talk about identity in a way that is not negative? How can different people of different identities come together and sit at a table and drink a couple beers and feel very connected and feel very comfortable being their authentic self? So at Airbnb, we do a lot of that stuff, including making sure that everyone who uses our platform feels safe. I always tell people that Airbnb, we cannot control people. No one can control people. So we do a huge job and we take really big responsibility onto making sure if anything happens while using our platform, if you think anything happens, if it is perceived that anything happens, we have plans and policies and strategies in place. We have dedicated teams in place to investigate all those things. And at the end of the day, make sure you have a wonderful experience, guest or host, and deciding that when something happens, how do we solve it? And some of that solving is, finding you a new place to stay, or some of that solving is having some hard conversations. But just making sure that everyone who uses our platform feels safe. And I always describe safe not in the context of feels comfortable.
Right.
I do think that what makes us educated and that what stretches our boundaries are coming out of our comfort boxes, and Airbnb can do that for you, right? If you're staying in a bungalow in the middle of Thailand as a person who is born and raised in the Midwest, that is a very uncomfortable experience, right? I've never done it before. But does that make it safe?
Right.
It can be very safe. And does that make it transformative? I think that being uncomfortable in those spaces, that's what makes the journey transformative. So yeah.
Okay. So this show is based on science, technology, engineering, and math. So the next question has nothing to do with that, and you don't have to answer it if you don't want to. But I do know that Airbnb sometimes get a semi-bad rep
Yeah.
because of hosts who
Yeah.
deny tenants to their place because of race or something that they are being discriminative about. So my question is, and again, you don't have to answer it, is what is Airbnb's policy or what do they do when they come across a host who discriminates against someone based solely off of what they look like or their gender or something like that?
Yeah, so I'd actually be happy to answer that. So in September 2016, we actually rolled out a new discrimination policy and a community commitment. So at Airbnb, we have rolled out to our population that you have to abide by our commitment of love and respect on our platform in order for you to be a guest and a host. And what that commitment basically says is that regardless of where you come from, what you look like, who you love, what identity you give yourself, you will be loved and you will be safe on this platform. And it's something that we take very, very seriously. And so from that, we also have policies and strategies to fight that. So whenever someone feels like they are unsafe, whenever someone feels that they have been discriminated against for every reason, they can easily call the customer service line and they are directed to a team of people that only deal with discrimination cases, and making sure not only, if necessary, do we find you a place to stay? Obviously, there's many things that we can do. But I think for me as an employee and as a Black woman walking around in the white male world, it's someone to talk to, someone to listen to, and know that someone is actually investigating this. So it's not one of those hotlines where you go and then somebody says, yeah, that's awesome, or yeah, that's so bad, and they hang up the phone. It's like, no, what are we going to do? So we want to hear your story. We want to hear your thoughts. We want to know every play-by-play, and we're going to get back to you as soon as possible, because we do not tolerate it. And when I joined Airbnb, the Airbnb While Black hashtag went viral. So to be part of a team of people that said, you know what, that hashtag's not cool,
right,
and we do not take it lightly. And there's going to have to be some serious communications around that, which is what in September 2016 came about with our community commitment that basically told the world, we do not take this lightly. We do not tolerate discrimination of any form. And if we find out that people are being discriminated against, when people, number one, if you feel as though you're being discriminated against, you need to contact us as soon as possible, right? And so we can investigate that, because our community, the people who are in Airbnb, our hosts and our guests, and the Airbnb people that work at headquarters and all around the world, we take that very, very seriously. So yeah.
Okay, that's good to know, because I do remember when that hashtag came out and it was like, ooh, that's not a good look. Do I really want to utilize Airbnb? But, on the flip side, I feel like almost every entity has an issue like that comes up, and people identify with it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's a company as a whole, because at one point, very, very recently, I believe we're supposed to be boycotting Pepsi, we're supposed to be boycotting Uber, we're supposed to be boycotting all these different things.
Yeah.
But that, that doesn't mean that this company is all under the same idea that was represented in this one instance.
I would say that, and I agree with you, and I would say that consumers, especially minority consumers, I think that it's important for us to criticize situations. It's important for us to look at commercials and say that wasn't cool. It's important, like these conversations need to happen to affect change. But I do think that it's also our responsibility as consumers to see, what did the organization, what did the group of people do next, right?
Mm-hmm.
I always tell people, I work for Airbnb, so I don't know what happens everywhere around at every Airbnb listing. But I do know what happens if something does happen that's not supposed to happen. Right. I do know the response that Airbnb gives. And I'm very proudful of working for an organization that is so black and white on, we will not tolerate certain things. And one of those is discrimination. Like, we're not going to do it in this house.
Not in this house.
Right.
No.
It's not going to work in this house. And we take that very seriously. And to be frank, like I said before, that's one of the major reasons why I decided to join Airbnb, was because I could tell even in the headquarters of the company culture that, oh no, we don't. Okay, we don't do this. Okay, and we don't take it lightly when someone does it. There will be some hard conversations, and that's very impactful to me.
Okay, so let's speak on that. How did you get into Airbnb? How did you get this position, and where did you come from? How did you find out about it?
Yeah. So I am a Stanford University graduate, class of 2011. And when I was at Stanford, right, chocolate cardinal for life. When I was at Stanford, I wanted to go into fashion PR, and that was my thing. Everyone who knows me from college, I was not the techie person, didn't want to be in tech. I think part of it was because everyone at Stanford wants to be in tech. So I was like, I'm just going to be the exact opposite. And so I majored in communications and Spanish, which have nothing to do with tech at all. And during my senior year, I was applying for jobs, and I just couldn't find a job that fit. There were some jobs that I got in fashion PR that were paying literally $25,000 a year, living in New York. And I was like, unless I'm going to be living in a box on the subway line, I just don't know how this is going to work.
Right.
Obviously, there were some jobs that I didn't. So towards my spring quarter, I literally ran into a amazing Black engineer who was younger than me. And, she asked me the question, what are you doing next year? Which is the worst question you can ask a senior in college. It's the worst question you can ask.
It's a hard question to answer for a lot of people. A very hard question.
Because there's one or two options, right? Either it's like, well, I'm about to go work at the UN, or it's I have nothing and I am nothing, and what is my worth, right? And so I was definitely in that category of like, what is my worth?
Mm-hmm.
And it just so happened that she interned at a company called NetApp over the summer. And because she was younger than me, it turned out that she just beasted that internship so much they wanted her back, but she couldn't. She's like, I have to go complete my degree. And so they asked her if she had any friends who wanted to work at NetApp. And so she just saw me crying because I was like, I have nothing to do. What is girl, I was stressed.
I
was
get
like,
it.
we're coming in 12 weeks for graduation. What am I going to say? And she gave me the information. I called the person literally on a whim. Didn't even know what program management was. And I went for the interview and I literally walked in the job and I was like, I don't know what NetApp is. I don't know what program management is, but I can communicate. I have a degree in it, but I've been communicating very well since I was 3, right? Like
I talk well.
Right.
I talk well.
Hashtag, I am articulate,
Yeah.
right? And I can get stuff done. You just tell me what you need to do and I can herd the cattle, which turns out is exactly what program management is. And so I was an engineering program manager at NetApp for 4.5 years. But NetApp's a really, really big company. So when I was there, it was about 13,000 people. So while I did get this huge foundational experience of what is tech and what is program management, and I'm very grateful for, it just really wasn't my cultural scene. And so December 2015, I went home for Christmas to be with my family, and I looked at my parents, and I said, I'm leaving NetApp. And January 2016 happened. I started applying. I started looking for companies that were much smaller, looking for companies that had a really good company culture. And Airbnb kept coming up on my Google search. And it's a funny story. I did not use Airbnb until I started working there, but I went on their website and there was a job in program management on the website in compliance. Had never done compliance before. And I said, why not? Right? You're going to miss all the shots you don't take.
Right.
So I just took it. And literally the last day of January, a recruiter called me and she was like, hi, I'm Kelly. I work at Airbnb. And I was like, let's do it. So, right. And that's what happened. So yeah.
Cool. So you've been there, you said a little over a year now, and you're enjoying this culture. Are you originally from the West Coast or the East Coast?
I'm not. I'm actually from St. Louis, Missouri.
Oh, so yes, you said Midwest.
Midwestern, born and raised, country in a good way. St. Louis is probably the most southern city that is not in the South. Very southern through and through. Everybody in St. Louis, I just said it. Everybody in St. Louis, that's either their parents or their grandparents came from the South. Very small community, which I think is a beautiful thing. So yeah.
So how are you enjoying San Francisco now? You coming from that smaller, semi-southern area.
San Francisco is interesting. I'm a very candid person, so I'm not going to lie to you, Kat.
Okay.
San Francisco is interesting. I think that I love the Bay Area because of my job. I always tell people St. Louis raised me, but San Francisco Bay Area definitely remixed me. I do not think that I would be in tech if I did not go to Stanford, because my story is not this story of a person who's like, I want to build a plane when I grow up, right? I was like, I want to buy shoes and like wear bomb clothes, and I want the Devil Wears Prada movie to be my life without all the drama. So this is a very different conversation about, how I live my life and that kind of thing. So it's interesting. I think that there are some great positives, like the innovation, the number of millennials that are in San Francisco Bay Area, like the number of people are between 21 and 32 is insane. Mm-hmm. And I love that about it. I love all these ideas because, being our age as well, I think that there's this kind of advantage of you think you can change the world before older adults come in and just kind of suck that hope from you. And I think it's a beautiful thing to watch all these 21, 22-year-olds fly into the Bay and they're like, I'm going to end poverty tomorrow, or I'm going to stop homelessness. I'm like, you're probably not going to end poverty tomorrow, but let's discuss that amazing idea about how you think that you will, because that could become something, right? But I'm not going to lie. I love St. Louis. There's many times where I do miss that hometown vibe. I do miss my mama's cooking. I do miss my dad's chili. And there is something to be said about being able to go home to your roots and kind of having those connections. So, yeah.
Okay. I mean, it's one of those things, though. You also have to kind of create roots, where you are. So I'm born and raised in Oakland, California, but I went to undergrad in Alabama, and then I lived in Texas for about 10 years.
Okay.
I tell people, I might have been born and raised on the West Coast, but I'm Southern made. Like I'm a
Right.
down south girl because
Yes,
yeah,
God. Yes, God.
yeah, absolutely. Because my formidable years, 18 and up, was in the South, and so
100%. And I think what you said is very poignant, right? I think there is power in this whole idea of what I like to call chosen family. I love my family. I have the greatest family in the world. My parents are dope. They were the perfect mix of like real revolutionaries mixed with how to navigate this code switching and this white male patriarchy and how to be your authentic self and kind of figure this out. And that's why I love going home. But there is something to be said about being in an area that's so far away from home and then having the ability to choose your family members, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that can bring some very deep, intense friendships in a good way. And I've also been blessed to have that. So, yeah.
That's good. That's good. So, like, back to what you're doing at Airbnb, what do you see for yourself that's next? Do you see staying with Airbnb for a while? And do you see innovation coming with Airbnb? So what do you see in the next 5 years?
Yeah, so I think I'll be staying at Airbnb for a minute. I'm really enjoying my job. That does not mean that if someone wants to have a conversation, I'm not going to take it. You always have a conversation. To be real. But I really enjoy my job. I love my manager. This is my 6th year adulting, as I call it. Mm-hmm. And the manager that I have at Airbnb, I've never had such a strong relationship with a manager before. I've never trusted a manager as much as I trust her and vice versa. And I am very grateful for that. For people who are listening, when you have a good manager, it's really hard to leave. So I definitely have that at Airbnb, and I definitely have a work family at Airbnb. But I do think most recently I decided that I do want to stay in the social impact tech space. So my next job, wherever that is, I'm definitely looking to kind of go to a startup that is under 100 people and get in those roots and have some kind of social impact, like Airbnb, but maybe in a different parallel of social impact, if you will, okay. But be a part of a very small team and see what I can do in that. Because, I went from 13,000 to 2,500 when I joined Airbnb. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was a huge move. And it's funny, when I got to Airbnb and started working here, I was like, oh, this is kind of like NetApp, but just a completely different culture, but just much smaller. But there are many things that are very much the same, right? Like, we have meetings, and when I see the CEO in the hallway, he says hi, because for the most part, because we're small, our CEO knows our faces. But it's not the same as working for a 100-person startup where the CEO's been to your house and knows your dog and knows your food. And that's just a different experience that I've never had. And I do want to have it. Some of my friends think I'm crazy for wanting that, because those are the hard, that's when you really have to grind. Mm-hmm. But I do think that'd be the next move for me. I want to have it. Who knows? I may hate it, but I do want to be 60 and say that I did it.
No, that's the thing. You got to try something that you really want to do and just see how it works. And, sometimes if it's not that great, positive, impactful thing, it's also a learning tool. You're going to get something from it. And you never know. I know of a woman who joined, just her and a friend started a pharmaceutical selling company, and she had stock in that company. And about, I think, 8 years after they sold it, she don't have to work anymore.
Amen. See, that's also what I want to do. I am all about retiring before 40. Don't know if it's going to happen, but I'm all for it.
Right. So you never know. You are in one of the best places, San Francisco, to even achieve something like that. So that is really cool. So do you see yourself incorporating fashion back into your profession?
No. That's going to be a hard no. I love fashion. I did an internship at a very, very popular and famous fashion house the summer before my senior year. And I always tell people that an internship made me who I am today. It was very hard. It was, and it really challenged me and my beliefs. and how hard I worked. It wasn't until that internship that I realized I could work hard. And I say that and people think it's crazy because like, you went to Stanford. And I'm like, yeah, but because I went to Stanford doesn't mean that I actually worked hard. It just means that I know how to study. I know how to write a paper, right? But that internship was the internship where it was like, oh, you gonna work today, right? Like you gonna work for this meal, right? And it was very draining. But it taught me who I was today. I think stepping back from it, one of the reasons why I wasn't as interested working professionally in the fashion world was that I didn't see myself in it. And even still today, I think there's a huge lack of diversity in fashion. I definitely feel that the diversity has heightened since, 2011. There's been some huge strides. But, as a person who's not a size 0, as a person who is dark skinned, as a person who doesn't have naturally straight hair, and more importantly, as a person who really enjoys her curls, right? Not saying that I wouldn't throw on a wig. That's the beautiful thing about hair. You can change it wherever you want, right? But I didn't see that in 2011. And I didn't see the innovation. I didn't see that I had a possibility for a voice. Now, that could be a couple of reasons. That could be maybe because I didn't try to have a voice, or I didn't put enough effort, or there weren't mentors in the industry during my 4-month internship that said, no, we gonna pull you in here, right? You gonna sit down and you better speak, right? And so that's part of it as well, which is one of the reasons why I'm such a big advocate of mentorship, because I didn't get that in the fashion world necessarily. And I especially didn't get it from a person who looked like me. So I'm very involved in that. And whenever I see a minority person, especially a Black woman, like roaming the halls of Air BNB, I'm like, oh, who are you? What you doing? Who you work for? Who your mama, right? Because you need that. You need somebody that looks like you to pull you into a corner and say, I got you. And what I got you also means that I will tell you about yourself, but I got you. And I didn't have that in New York, and that's okay. Who knows? Maybe if I had that, maybe I would have stuck it out. But I decided not to.
Yeah, I mean, I totally get what you're saying, which is kind of why I do this show. That's one of the reasons why I do this show, is because there's a lack of diversity on television when it comes to STEM careers. And a lot of people don't realize that, there's multiple ethnicities doing multiple things inside science, tech, engineering, and math. And even now, for when I talk to students and I ask or even parents, and I say, well, tell me a fictional character in STEM. They can rattle off all these things. And I say, okay, tell me a non-fictional character, a non-fictional woman in STEM on TV. It's mute.
They don't give us that voice, right? Which is why I'm always grappling with this whole Silicon Valley show. Because whenever I watch Silicon Valley, and I'll be very frank, I've only seen a couple of episodes.
Wait, I don't even know what show you're talking about. There's a Silicon Valley show?
The show called Silicon Valley. I think it's on HBO or Starz, one of the shows. And it's, obviously a dramatic interpretation of what happened to Silicon Valley. And it's about a group of people who were trying to make a startup. I would say, like, if the actual Silicon Valley and the showgirls had a baby, it'd be this show. That's the best way to describe it. But there's a huge lack of diversity on it. I think that one of the reasons, well, there's 2 reasons why the tech industry gets so smashed hard on diversity. One of it is that we are not diverse. When you look at numbers in the industry, we are not diverse. When you have a 15,000 person company and 100 people identify as Black, you are not diverse. When you work for a 15,000 person company and you only have 6 VP female engineers, that is clearly an actual problem.
Right.
I was talking to my friends a couple days ago about, we're not going to call people out, but about this recent carbonated drink commercial. And the one thing that I said was, I said, I wonder who was in the room when they concepted that commercial, right? Was there a Black person in the room with that commercial? Was there a person of color in the room when they decided to go this route? And that's why diversity is needed, because you're not going to know things you don't know or things that you don't experience or feel. So that's the first reason why diversity is lacking. I think the second reason why diversity is lacking is that we as minority people, you see these representations on TV and you're like, nobody looks like me. Like, what is going on, right? And that is daunting, and that is psychologically impactful, and that's scary, and that brings a lot of anxiety.
Yeah, I mean, my biggest thing, especially again talking to parents or adults, but mostly adults, is how we see the black woman on television. You know,
Right.
and if you have a daughter in a formidable age, 12 and above, and they watch mainstream TV and they're looking for a black woman to look up to, who are they going to see? We lost Michelle Obama recently, so who else do we got? You go.
Don't say that. I did not lose Shelly.
Well, yeah, yeah. Shelly is not.
Shelly's here. Like, don't play no game.
Yeah, okay. She's still around, just like
Right.
Oprah is still around.
Still around.
What I'm saying is, if you have a 12-year-old girl, she's not looking for the channel that Michelle Obama is on. She's looking at Bad Girls Club, Real Housewives of Atlanta, Love and Hip Hop, and all these shows. And I don't downplay someone who watches the show. I'm just saying, if your daughter is watching that with you and you're having this discussion, and now I'm going to schools to talk to them about STEM, and in junior high, these girls have weaves, fake eyelashes, fake nails, but they can't read, they can't do science, they can't do math.
It's an issue.
And I'm just like.
And I think that also boils down to, understanding our own history. I was at a conference this past weekend, and we did this really cool exercise called crossing the line, where you put two groups of people on two different sides, kind of like a Soul Train line. Mm-hmm. Just look at it, and you have a moderator in the middle, and they just say a statement. They say a statement. And if you believe in the statement, you go on one side. If you don't believe in the other, and they talk about these differences. And one of the statements was, she said, do the images on TV affect our Black children in a negative way? Yes or no? And I had a very hard time grappling with that question, because I'm like, I watch that stuff on TV. I watch all types of TV. And for lack of better terms, like, have a job. I'm not in these streets, right? Mm-hmm. So like, what does that look like? But I do think there is something very inspirational and very powerful about discussing. It's hard as a Black kid or a minority kid, a person of color kid, to walk around in this world and not even see themselves in a history class.
Right.
So how do you expect me to know myself and get to know myself, especially in formative years, when I'm in history class and all you talk about
is American history, which is
right, like
European history.
Like, let's talk about slavery, and then let's talk about all the amazing, wonderful Black Americans who stood up to the challenge and got the Black people out of slavery. Which, don't get it twisted, Harriet Tubman is everything to me, and Sojourner Weather is everything to me, and James Baldwin is literally everything to me, right? But let's not get it twisted. They stepped up to a challenge of oppression, right? James Baldwin isn't Shakespeare. He didn't have the privilege to wake up one day and be this fantastic, amazing, life-changing author or playwright like Shakespeare, who was life-changing. But he had the words, James Baldwin did, and he used them to free his people. Shakespeare had no people to free, which is where that creativity came from. So I always tell people, especially in schools, when you're dealing with minority students and students of color, it's important to have that representation in school and in those histories in order for them to also find themselves. I feel like my ancestors helped me find myself and are still helping me find myself. It's hard out there for a minority kid right now.
It's very hard.
It's
and
hard.
I feel like we can have this conversation for another hour. However, we have 3 minutes
yes,
left
ma'am.
in our 30-minute conversation.
Yes,
so on that 3 minutes, I just want to have you say or give any advice to a student who is looking at you and looking at the position you have and is interested in that position. What advice would you give them about going forward?
I would say, first and foremost, reach out. I want to hear from you. I think that building those connections is very important. So I would say any student that wants to reach out, they need to reach out. And don't be afraid to reach out. A quick story to that is my brother's at Northwestern and he wants to be a filmmaker. And I was literally watching a documentary on the first Black animator at Disney. And as I was watching it, I was like looking up the people's names who work, who did the interviews with him. And I found this one guy, and basically he said, I found one guy's name. I Facebooked him. I became Facebook friends with him. And I'm like, can my brother talk to you? And he said, sure. So, I mean, literally just reach out. Yes. Look up these people and reach out. And then I would say, secondly, you need to learn to fight your battles.
Mm-hmm.
Growing up for me, I had a lot of people say, choose your battles, and I disagree with that. I think that every battle that you have, you need to deal with it. But I think it's how in which we fight them. But first and foremost, reach out. Let me know. I would love to talk to you. See?
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show
Oh,
today.
so cool.
Really appreciated you. And thank you to my audience for being here on the show and watching In the Know of Cat Bobino. And if you have questions for Lexi, as always, reach out to me. I'll send them to her, and I will make sure that you guys connect, because I want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to do what they really want to do out here in the world. So thank you. Until next week.
Bye.